What's going on, everybody, and welcome to XSTEM All Access. I'm Justin Schaefer, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this brand new online program. Today is the first session of a 5-day series that's brought to you by the USA Science and Engineering Festival. The mission of the USA Science and Engineering Festival is to inspire the next generation, that's you guys, to pursue careers in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, also known as STEM. You can check out their other programs and events at usasciencefestival.org. So guys, make sure you open your chat box so you can ask questions throughout the program. In the upper right corner of the viewer, you should be able to see the chat icon. Click on that and open that chat box and get started typing up. You don't have to be logged in. You can just click chat as guest. And today we have attendees, over 40,000 of you guys, representing all US states and more than 30 countries. How cool is that? Why don't you guys let me know where you're from in the chat right now? By the way, I'm representing live from New York City right now, and it is not too pretty here, but that's okay. We're making the best of our situation. Looks like we got some people from New York as well. I see the Bronx represented. Any other pretty cool places here? Very, very cool. New Jersey is in here. That's awesome. That's awesome. There are all kinds of cool countries and people represented. Looks like Pennsylvania is another really cool one. There's a lot of, oh wow, Maryland is in here. Okay, all right. Looks like Texas. Okay. Anyone from outside of the country in here? All right, Virginia, I see. Man, this is cool. This is amazing. California, North Carolina. Wow, DC, UK. Okay. We have an international Oklahoma. Oh, wow. I think I've met one or two people from Oklahoma in my life. Okay. Connecticut, very cool. The Dominican Republic, wow. You guys are from all over the place. This is amazing. Well, I hope you've marked your calendars for this time on May 14th, 15th, 18th, and 19th so you don't miss a moment of this exciting event. Over the course of this series, we'll be getting up close and personal with a number of your favorite STEM trailblazers. And I just want to give a couple more quick shout outs. Looks like we got Belgium, China, Israel, North Carolina, Kentucky, Ecuador, India, Honduras. Wow, this is amazing. Wow, I haven't seen anything like this before. This is pretty cool to be a part of here from my own room. Well, each day in our XSTEM series, we'll be featuring a new topic with multiple speakers who are eager to answer your questions. We're going to hear from experts on climate science, conservation, engineering, neuroscience, medicine, and my personal favorite, as you can see here, space exploration. Did I mention that a NASA astronaut who recently returned from space is going to be joining us later in the series, as well as some very special guests who are on the front lines of the global pandemic? How cool is that? I hope you guys are ready to be inspired by their stories and maybe even motivated to follow your own STEM path. Now, before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to recognize our sponsor, AstraZeneca. A huge thanks to AstraZeneca for their generous support of the XSTEM All Access virtual conference series. We appreciate you guys. So before we jump into this session, I'll share with you guys just a little bit more about me. So you guys see right here down at the bottom right that my name is Justin Schaefer, but I also go out by the name of Mr. Fascinate. I travel all over the world and excite young people like you about the prospect of STEM careers. I also have my own background in science. My undergrad degree was in marine and environmental science. I had a couple of internships out on the coast of the Savannah, Georgia, and we went 40 nautical miles out in the open ocean. I got opportunities to work in the White House when I was in college. And I also am a part-time doctoral student in Columbia now, where I'm pursuing a doctorate in science education. I have my own cartoon series called Hood Science, where we personify and make accessible STEM concepts for urban kids and communities. You can find more info about me at my website, justinschaefer.com, or you can just follow me on Instagram at Mr. Fascinate, and you can see more info there. So let's get started with today's program. Our theme today is shattering STEM stereotypes. Boom. And we have two speakers who have done just that. So guys, answer a question for me here in the chat. When you picture a scientist or an engineer in your head, what do you see? I'm hoping that today's speakers can change you guys' opinions on what that is. One of the things that I used to picture, I guess, when I was a young person, a teenager, like most of the folks that signed up for this, I was thinking of a person with a lab coat, goggles. They probably, weren't very comfortable speaking publicly. They had trouble communicating their emotions. Yeah, it looks like some of you guys agree. You guys agree that people with lab coats is a big part of this. Other things that I would think about is, maybe like really, really thick glasses. I felt like that was just a picture that was portrayed to me. Maybe an evil mastermind, right? Like Dexter's Laboratory, if some of you guys remember that. Bill Nye, I see. Goggles. Yeah, those are, yeah, definitely goggles. But what about a person in STEM generally? Someone that's an engineer, someone that's a software developer, right? A graphic designer, a mathematician. What do you guys picture? What do those people look like? Einstein, Bill Nye, yes. Looks like my mom. That's cool. Congratulations. I mean, a lot of these folks that you guys named here are white males. And, for a long time, science was dominated by white males. But what our people in this next segment are going to do is show you what other scientists can look like. And I see, it looks like Hidden Figures maybe is a cool example of that. Yeah, that's really cool. There's going to be some other folks that we're going to be showing you guys a little bit later that will shatter those stereotypes and change the way you guys are thinking about what a scientist or a person in STEM or a software engineer actually looks like. So in this segment, we'll actually hear from two of these people. One of their names is Dr. Natoki Ford, and Kim Swennen is the other one. And both of them are heroes of mine. I am really excited to hear from both of them. They have some amazing information to share with you guys and really, really unique perspectives. Oh, Justin Schaefer, I saw as a scientist. Really cool. Megamind. Yeah, that's another really cool one, right? So I'm going to go ahead and get started with introducing Natoki. Natoki is a biomedical researcher and a former Obama White House senior policy advisor. And Kim herself is a Hollywood actress turned Google software engineer. So I'm getting ready now to fire this up for Natoki's introduction. Here we go. So Natoki, again, is a biomedical scientist and a social entrepreneur who earned her PhD in experimental pathology from Harvard University. She served as senior policy advisor in the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy under President Barack Obama, and she is the founder and CEO of FlySci Enterprise, an organization promoting social change, particularly in the STEM fields. Another fun fact about Natoki, she was brave enough to go hang gliding in Rio de Janeiro. How many of you guys would do that if you guys had the opportunity? Hang gliding to hang from the glider and jump from a really high height. I could go on and on about her experience, and she's actually one of my personal heroes. She didn't know that, but I'll let her fill you in on the rest. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a very, very warm welcome in the chat virtually to Dr. Natoki Ford. What's up, Natoki?
Hello.
How you doing?
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for that great introduction, Justin. And I did know I was your hero. I'm honored to hear that.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure it didn't completely do you justice, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to go ahead and do yourself justice on screen. I'll leave it to you, Natoki.
Sounds good. Thank you. Well, it's such an honor to be here with you all to talk about the importance of shattering stereotypes in STEM. This is certainly a passion of mine, and it was definitely a large driving force behind the Image of STEM project that I designed and ran when I was a senior policy advisor in the Obama White House. We know that negative stereotypes in STEM can be so damaging. And so the Image of STEM work was really about how do we use this amazing power of media and storytelling to help improve the way that the public perceives what is a STEM job and who should be doing STEM jobs. I heard someone mention in the chat earlier that they talked about the film Hidden Figures, and this was actually a great segue for me because this movie was literally the epitome of my Image of STEM project and was a great example of what it means to shatter stereotypes in STEM. If you're not familiar with this movie, it brought to life this incredible story of three brilliant African-American women who worked at NASA during the space race: Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson. And so for my absolute last event as an Obama White House Senior Policy Advisor, I was able to help co-organize a screening of Hidden Figures in December of 2016. So let's jump over to a few slides now. So the fact that we were screening Hidden Figures was a bit of a historic occasion. We were hosting a White House screening of a film about the previously obscure contributions of Black women, Black female engineers and mathematicians at NASA, while the first Black president was still in office. His Black Girl Magic First Lady, Mrs. Michelle Obama, was providing closing remarks, and yours truly, a Black female scientist, would be able to moderate this panel with the cast and the creative team. This was certainly an incredible moment and such a high note for me to end my time in the Obama White House on. But I have to say, my motivation and interest in this work began long before I ever set foot in the White House. And it actually started when I was a graduate student at Harvard, and due to some experiences that I had dealing with stereotypes that weren't so great. So I was transitioning from being the student who was studying chemistry at historically Black university in the South, Clark Atlanta University. Shout out to my HBCUs. I was transitioning from an HBCU in the South, a rigorous chemistry program, going into a hardcore biology program in New England. And so this transition was difficult for me, both academically and culturally. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel smart anymore. Many times I would go to these classes and I became so hyper aware of often being the only person of color. Oftentimes I was the only Black person in many of my classes. And so I became so afraid to speak because I didn't want to make a mistake or sound silly. In my mind, I figured that might confirm what I figured everyone else around me might have already suspected, that because I'm Black and because I'm female, I'm not supposed to be good at science anyway. Little did I know, this is actually known as stereotype threat. So this stereotype threat really did a number on me and the confidence that I once had as a young woman. I really began to struggle in school. School was really difficult for me. And it also changed me in that I felt really conscious about the way that I presented myself. I was afraid to look like too much of a girly girl that was into fashion or makeup because I thought people might not take me seriously as a scientist if I did. And so I went through this drastic change in my personality. I was struggling so hard in school. It was really difficult for me. And over time, within just a matter of weeks, it became too hard to continue and pretend like everything was okay. So after just one semester, I decided that I couldn't take it anymore. So I took a leave of absence and I left. I left Harvard and I went to Hollywood. Now, this may not be as big of a stretch as you might think. I actually had always been into the performing arts as a child. And so I figured if I am going to take a break from science, I want to go as far away as I can possibly get. Well, as you might imagine, trying to become an actor is hard too. And I quickly discovered that I was not willing to starve for it. And so I ended up taking a position as a teacher in the Los Angeles Unified School District. And this was certainly a life-changing decision for me because I realized that those feelings that I had when I was a grad student where I didn't feel smart anymore, there are kids who might feel like that in the 7th grade. And if those feelings could be so significant for me as an adult that already had a track record of success, that they could prompt me to leave a place like Harvard, how damaging could they be to a 7th grader? So this knowledge gave rise to this real passion. I decided that I wanted to help inspire and motivate people, especially kids, to not feel that way or to not be paralyzed by fear or feel limited by society's low expectations of them. So I decided to go back after being gone for a year and a half. I went back to grad school and I went back to Harvard. And it was even harder the second time, but this time was different. This time I had a new perspective and an added incentive, and I was determined to not quit. So I kept going, and slowly but surely I transitioned from surviving at Harvard to thriving. And in the spring of 2011, I was able to graduate with my PhD. And as you can see in this photo, I was very excited on graduation day. Following my graduation, I did do a short postdoctoral fellowship, but I also knew that I wanted to transition outside of the lab and work more in the policy space because I was so interested in education still. So I ended up getting a position as a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow working with President Obama's PCAST. So PCAST stands for the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. So this was President Obama's Science Brain Trust, and they came together and they would regularly meet in DC and advise the president on a range of issues from involving science and technology policy issues. I consider this the absolute best fly on the wall scenario, because if you can't find me in this photo, there I am in the back working and looking like a bit of a fly on the wall. So following this position, I wound up transitioning to a senior policy role, which is where I began the image of STEM work that I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation. So this work is really about helping us address these persistent challenges that we have with attracting a workforce in STEM that looks more like the beautiful diversity of the world we actually live in. Right now, women are about 51% of the population, but are only about 28% of STEM workers. When it comes to race and ethnicity, African Americans and Hispanics are around 28% of the population over the age of 21, but only make up about 13% of the scientific and engineering workforce. So this is an issue because one, we're not producing enough people to fill the jobs of today. We don't have enough STEM skilled workers for our jobs, but it's also a problem because we're missing out on ideas. Diversity is such a known driver of innovation. When you have teams that have diverse perspectives, they're more creative and they're more innovative, especially when it comes to solving complex problems. So we really cannot afford to keep missing out on all the available and talented minds that are out there, because we have so many important issues that are awaiting for young people just like you out there to solve them. And so let's look at a couple areas that I think it's important for us to explore just in terms of opportunities for people with STEM skills. I also think it's important for people to recognize that there's a wide range of jobs for people with STEM skills. So we have to also change perceptions about what a STEM job could be. So as you might imagine, as we talked about, we are going to hear from astronauts later on in the program or later on throughout the festival. You might be someone who might help be a part of the team that actually gets a human to travel all the way to Mars as a part of space travel and discovery. We also need people with STEM skills to help improve our medicines, and especially given the current climate and reality that we're all living in, we have so many scientists working hard to develop vaccines and treatments, and particularly for the COVID-19 pandemic that we're all experiencing. So we need people to help us optimize the medicines that we are treating people with. Clean water is another area. There's so many parts of the world and even parts of this country that have issues with access to clean water. So we need really smart people to help address this problem. Maybe you'll be like me and want to be a scientist or an engineer that goes to work in government and help inform science policy development. Here's an area you might not be thinking about. What about going and working in entertainment? There are lots of people who work as data scientists at places like Netflix and Hulu and help inform the algorithms and different things that will shape the content that we consume. And then lastly, education is so important. We need people with STEM skills to not only become great teachers, but also to help develop tools that improve the way that people are able to even learn STEM subjects. So as I wrap up, I like to close with this photo because this is my absolute favorite photo of myself. I call this my female Steve Urkel stage of life, but I love this picture of myself. And this is what I would like to leave you all with. There is no one size fits all in terms of what it means for, or what a STEM professional is supposed to look like, or even the types of jobs that people with STEM skills are supposed to work in. Also, no one, absolutely no one is born being good at anything, and that includes math or science. We all have to work at improving and developing our skills. That also means that just because you might start out and something could be hard at first, that does not mean that you don't belong. it's also important for us to recognize that being different is actually a good thing. So if you find yourself in spaces where you are among the few, or perhaps the only person that looks like you, well, that means that it's even more important for you to be there. So believe in yourselves, challenge yourselves, be bold, be brave, find something that you can be really passionate about. And wherever you go, always make sure that you show up as your truest and most authentic self, because otherwise you will be doing yourself a disservice and you'll be depriving the world of the real and the absolute best version of you. So thank you so much for your attention. And I can't wait to hear some of your questions and to learn more about Kim's story as well. So I'll stop there. Thank you all.
Natoki, that was amazing. Thank you so much for that. Wow. Awesome job. And I was just really inspired by that, because I think that's a message, a lot of people don't hear from people like you who have literally walked the walk. The fact that you come from an HBCU background. I also went to Hampton University, so have an HBCU background as well. And you discussed the transition. You touched on so many things right there, the HBCU, the Ivy League background, and just all the different fields that people that are interested in STEM can go into that they may not think, this is a STEM field. So really, really from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for sharing those really, really wise words.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. And I just thought, the presentation itself was fire, man. I haven't seen too many people pull off the digital thing, but you made it work. You made it rock. So that was really cool. So we have some really cool questions that are pre-submitted for our audience. And so there's a couple of questions I want to start off with. What was the most rewarding initiative or program that you've been a part of so far?
Well, I have to say the image of STEM work that I designed and organized and led was probably my most rewarding for a number of reasons. One is because it was my brainchild. This was my baby, and I was able to conceptualize it and come up with the concept. But I think that I didn't mention in my story is I had a gap year. When my AAAS fellowship ended, I left the White House. I had this sort of a Will Smith pursuit of happiness year, trying to figure out what I would do. And I wound up getting an opportunity to come back to the White House. So I had a little bit of a struggle period where I was determined to find ways to get this project off the ground. And so because I had invested so much and I had sacrificed so much, it meant so much for me to be able to come back to the White House and run that project. And then just to see the response of the industry working with people in entertainment was just really incredible. We were able to organize around 15 events in 18 months. And it was just amazing to see how people really wanted to respond to this call to action to see how they could help, because this is a really big problem that we've had with diversity in STEM for so long. And so I'm also happy to share that even after leaving the White House, many of these same people who helped and who were part of my events, they still respond to my emails and make time for me for phone calls. And so I think it speaks a lot to the work in terms of, I don't have this big fancy White House title anymore, but people are still really committed to the cause and the purpose behind the work. So my image of STEM work has definitely been the most fulfilling project for me for so many different reasons.
Oh, that's amazing. And like I said, you, Dr. Ford, are one of my role models, just seeing how you've transitioned from one place to the other. It's very similar to a lot of my backstory. I'm really curious about you, though. What role model did you have when you were growing up? Who did you look to and think, I want to be like that person?
Well, it's interesting. I didn't have, as a kid, a particular person that I looked up to, surprisingly. I would say my motivation for how I wound up in science was actually motivated by something that happened to me as a child. So many people don't know that I'm actually blind in one eye. I was in an accident that left me blind in one eye. And so it gave me this really strong curiosity about vision and how do the eyes work. And so my interest in science was inspired by something that happened to me that I wanted to understand more about. But I also will say I have to give my parents so much credit. I really look up to my parents. So shout out Mom and dad, Robert and Catherine Ford, who I know are watching, because they really instilled in me so many great values about not feeling confined by your current circumstance. Growing up, we didn't have a lot of money, but my parents always made me believe that if I was willing to work hard, I could literally do anything that I put my mind to. And my mother is such a big proponent of education. And so she's like, you have to get an education because that could be your ticket to take you anywhere. So I would say my parents have had definitely the biggest impact on me in terms of inspiring this belief that I could be anything and go anywhere, just as long as I was willing to work hard, and really prioritizing my education.
Very cool. And yeah, that's outstanding. I know there's a number of parents that are on the chat and watching the live stream today. So hope you guys are taking notes on that if you want to have a kid grow up to be something like Dr. Ford. So how did you first get interested in biomedical science, and what type of research did you focus on in the beginning?
So well, interestingly enough, I initially started out thinking that I would become an MD and work as an ophthalmologist, again, because I was interested in vision and how the eyes work. And ophthalmology is the study of the eye and diseases of the eye. And so I did an internship, and I actually had someone sort of discourage me from the field because because of the fact that I'm blind in one eye, and they thought that I wouldn't be able to do surgery, which is a part of being an ophthalmologist. And so I sort of let someone defer my dream a bit, but it didn't completely derail me. It made me shift gears to focus more on research. So the research that I was able to do in graduate school, I worked in the lab of the incredible Dr. Patricia DeMore, who is a fantastic woman, mentor. Still, I'm in touch with her today, really incredible scientist. And we studied a disease known as age-related macular degeneration, which causes blindness, particularly in people over the age of 60. And so again, starting with that thing that happened to me as a kid in terms of becoming blind in one eye at an early age, and then continuing that on and in terms of when I applied to graduate school in the research lab that I joined, still sticking with this emphasis on studying blindness and thinking about how we can improve treatments for certain diseases in the case of AMD, age-related macular degeneration.
Gotcha. So you're causing me to geek out here, and I know you're interested in some similar stuff. So if you don't mind indulging me on this. So you said you're blind in one eye. That means you don't have any depth perception, right? Is that correct?
Well, it's interesting. In theory, that should be correct. However, I was able to play sports. So someone who lacks depth perception shouldn't be able to shoot a basketball. And I'll be the first to tell you, I was quite good, at least in my mind, at least. Anyway, I do have footage of a game-winning shot, by the way. I think because this is the amazing thing about your body, especially I think when things happen to you early on, and the plasticity of your brain. Because I was so small, I do believe that my brain was able to accommodate for the deficit. Now, I'm not completely blind in this eye. There is some, if I were to cover up my quote unquote good eye, I can see a very kind of limited picture with kind of a lot of static and particles, things covering the view. But I do not have any peripheral vision on my right side. That is probably the biggest loss that I have experienced. So sometimes if someone is trying to hand me something from my right, I don't know it because I don't have any peripheral vision. So for peripheral vision, what that is when you are looking straight ahead, it's your ability to be able to see things on the side of you, even though you're staring straight ahead. So I would say the biggest deficit that I have experienced is the lack of peripheral vision on my right side. But I do have some degree of depth perception, which I will attribute to the fact that I was able to play sports and be pretty decent at it.
That is so cool. Hopefully our audience got something from that. I mean, I'm definitely geeking out. That's really cool to conceptualize. It sounds like your brain is prioritizing one of your eyes' vision over the other so that you can still see pretty decently, but then you also have the depth perception because you can see a little bit out of the other eye. Really cool. It's really cool stuff. So we're closing down here. I think we'll do one more question here. So it looks like in your bio, you talk about using storytelling to promote social change. So can you give an example of that? I thought that was a really cool part of what you do.
Yeah, so we touched on this, and I love that someone already shouted out Hidden Figures during the intro. So storytelling has such a tremendous power to help promote social change, because when you think about it, media doesn't just reflect culture, it creates culture. And a very cool example I like to cite is the CSI effect, if any of you have ever heard of it. So essentially, if you think back to the early, well, some of you will probably maybe weren't even born yet, but in the early 2000s, late 90s, there were all these shows that were portraying forensic science in a really cool way. And what we began to observe was that there was this increase in the university system in the number of people that were actually majoring in forensic science. And so from about the first 5 years or so, there was a doubling from like 2000 to 2005. There was a doubling in the number of people who were majoring in forensic science. And also these fields tend to be more female, because we think many of the forensic scientists that we saw on television were women. And so this is just one example that I like to give in terms of media really creating culture and even changing a perception about a particular field. And so we're really, in the work that I'm still doing as a consultant with a number of different groups, it's still seeking to use media to change perceptions, to improve public views about people who they think can work in certain spaces, or even the types of jobs that exist. And so that's really, I think, is really going to be the game changer in terms of changing and moving the needle in really increasing the representation of people who have been for far too long underrepresented in the STEM fields.
Very cool. And Ntoki, that is precisely why I look up to you, because that is the exact same mission that I have as Mr. Fascinate, changing perceptions with media and content creation. I think that's how you show people that these things are possible, by showing them examples of folks that look like them or present themselves in a way that they admire, to make them feel like these career fields are accessible and attainable. And really quickly, before everyone, let's give Ntoki a virtual round of applause. Thank you so much, Ntoki, and we are going to see you again towards the end of the program. Now, before we move into our next phase, what I want to do is address, I heard that there's a number of folks that are using the chat and maybe putting some things that are not too nice in the chat. And I'd really appreciate if you guys would stop doing that, because we want to have a really cool, interactive, and fun experience for our people. There's a lot of people here that are looking to learn. And, a few folks might make it so that we won't have an interactive experience like we really, really want to. So if you guys could just please not do that for the sake of everybody else on the chat, we would greatly appreciate it. Now, what we are going to do before we dive into our next speaker session, let's take a few moments here and let's get some movement going. Let's have a little bit of fun, and we're going to go into our brain break. Okay, so you've probably been hearing a lot about the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, on the news lately. They are our nation's medical research agency and one of the top medical research centers in the world. Did you know that the doctor who heads up the NIH is also a musician? Dr. Francis Collins is the director of the NIH. In addition to his day job of improving human health and saving lives, he has a passion for music. So, fun fact here, Dr. Collins can be found riding his Harley on the weekends. Talk about shattering STEM stereotypes. I mean, that's pretty cool, right? So during this time of staying at home, Dr. Collins performed the reimagined version of John Lennon's classic song, Imagine. Hope you guys enjoy it.
And we're going to do a song. Not a song I wrote. Well, the words were written by Kerry Wolinetz, an amazing lyricist. And the tune was written by, well, John Lennon. He's pretty good too. And it's a song about imagine. So yeah, here we all are. Think about how you could not have imagined this a few months ago. And now here we are. Imagine there's no traffic. Everyone's at home like I am. No schools, no meetings. just Zooming or the phone. Imagine all the people wearing the masks outside. Imagine all the nurses, aides and doctors too, working day and night now, all gowned up in the ICU. Imagine mitigation, flattening the curve. You may say it's just a virus, but it's not the common cold. And each one of us can spread it and put at risk the world. Imagine empty cafes. I wonder if you can. I bet you can. Rediscovering your kitchen. And 6 feet from your fellow man and woman. Imagine all the people keeping your neighbor safe. You may say it's overreacting and you want to break the quarantine. Don't do it. All the people have to join us to stop COVID-19. Imagine all the science, that's what we do. Treatments that give us hope. Lots of tests to help us before the world goes broke. Imagine there's a vaccine and it's ready for us all. You may feel like it's forever and you've had to stay inside. But we're all in this together. NIH is saving lives. But we're all in this together. NIH is saving lives. You're saving lives. And imagine we're going to get through this, because we will.
All right, so Dr. Collins will actually be making another special appearance later in our virtual series, along with Dr. Anthony Fauci, on Monday, May 18th. So really quickly, I want to reference something that we did yesterday. We kicked off the hashtag Show Us How You STEM activity on social media. And if you guys want to participate, we'll be featuring some of you guys in our live stream. Just tag at USA Science Fest and use the hashtag Show Us How You STEM and show us videos of your music skills or what you did in the science fair or videos of your different STEM projects that you're doing from home right now. Let's all celebrate the ways that we're using STEM together. Post how you're exploring nature maybe, or even how you're shattering STEM stereotypes. Really, the point of this is to show us how you STEM. Make sure you use that hashtag and tag USA Science Fest. And hey, you might as well tag me at Mr. Fascinate as well, because I'm really curious. I want to check out what you guys come up with. Okay, so that was a fun break. And if you guys are just tuning in, my name is Justin Schaefer, also known as Mr. Fascinate, and this is XSTEM All Access, where we'll be showcasing a number of heroes in STEM. Today, the ones that are breaking and shattering STEM stereotypes. So I hope you guys are ready to hear from our next speaker. So Kim Swennen is our next speaker, and she took an indirect route through Hollywood on her way to becoming a software engineer. After appearing in some well-known television shows such as Grey's Anatomy, Criminal Minds, and Mad Men, she set her passion on pursuing the field of computer science. Today, she's a software engineer at Google and a dedicated advocate for STEM. Kim holds degrees in the arts from Yale University and London's prestigious Central School of Speech and Drama, as well as a master's in computer science from UCLA. I hope you all are as intrigued as I am. I'm super excited to hear about her really unexpected and unanticipated career path. Please, Kim, join us on the screen. All right.
Hey, Justin, how are you?
How's it going? Doing amazing.
Good.
And you are live in LA, I hear, and it sounds like it's really bright and sunny over there.
It is. We're lucky that we get that a lot of the time. So try not to take it for granted.
Well, I really hope you don't. Here in New York City, I'm quite pale compared to my usual self, but it's all good. Kim, I'm going to give you your chance to do your thing and let you have at it.
Awesome. Thank you. Before I get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about what I currently do. And I'm a software engineer on YouTube. And I thought that might be fun for you all to know, because whenever you hit that big red subscribe button under a video on YouTube, some of my code runs somewhere in a data center, because I am a back-end software engineer on YouTube channel subscriptions. And as Justin mentioned, I had a sort of interesting approach to getting to software engineering. So I went from being an actor on television to being a software engineer. And the picture is actually from my Noogler orientation at Google, where we do get to wear the beanies. And going from one to the other, I got to really see the differences between what I thought it meant to be a software engineer based on what I was seeing on film and television around me, and what it actually means to be one in reality. And those differences turned out to be really important, because some of the stereotypes that I saw didn't particularly make me want to become an engineer. In fact, I found many of them intimidating, and they often made me think that I wouldn't fit in, or they made me feel like I wouldn't be able to hack it, all puns intended. And I don't want that to be what you take away from what you see in the media about people who are in STEM, and specifically in software and computers. So let me share with you some of the myths that you see on screen that turned out to be inaccurate based on my experiences as an engineer. So the first one I want to talk to you about is that on screen, engineers can somehow solve hard problems really fast. And you may see something like this. Right? This is what you'll often see on TV. Hacker is presented with this insane challenge, manages to break into the government system in about 10 seconds with 5 keystrokes, and dramatic music ensues. In reality, this is more what engineering looks like. And it takes time to figure out how you're going to tackle and solve a really big engineering problem. Now, I realize that that may make it sound quite boring in comparison, but an important thing to remember is that engineering at its heart is equal to problem solving. And a good analogy would be working on a puzzle. So, reshare my video. All right. So imagine that I were to give you a puzzle and it had about 3 pieces and it took you 10 seconds to solve. It wouldn't be particularly satisfying, right? So engineering is a lot like that. There is a great joy you get from working your way through an intellectual challenge, and the eureka moment you get when you solve it is that much more satisfying if it was a hard problem. And another important thing to remember is the only way you're going to learn something as a scientist or as an engineer is to go into unfamiliar territory and do something that you don't already know how to do. So it's important to remember that if it feels like a challenge, it actually means you're learning something. So because of that, I've come to value the process of digging in and taking the time to understand a problem. And it does often take me more than 10 seconds. So the next myth that I wanted to cover is that on screen, software engineers seem to never make mistakes. And again, these might be some familiar images you would see from television. So they're somehow just able to find the right answer and they beeline right for it. And what I find most frustrating, to be honest, is they somehow manage to never have bugs in their code. The reality of engineering is that every once in a while, this is going to happen. So you will break things and you will make mistakes. And you will not always succeed in your first attempt. In fact, very rarely will you succeed in your first attempt. And I used to be really afraid of breaking things. When I started at Google, it was really hard for me to risk changing anything big in the code, because what would I do if it was working and then I touched it and then it stopped working? You think that'd be pretty awful, right? And then it happened a few times. And I realized that not only did the world not end, but I discovered that that is actually part of the engineering process. So it's good to know that there's not actually a right answer often in engineering, right? Every decision you make has trade-offs, and you have to make these decisions based on all of the available information you have in the moment. And in fact, just so you know, that's actually one of the reasons why engineering actually is a very creative field, and a lot of people don't think of it that way. And the reality is that you may have to try a couple things before you figure out the way you want to proceed. You may have to get more information by just trying stuff. So in fact, it actually has a name, which was good to know. It's called iterating, and we use it a lot. So I learned that rather than let my fear of breaking things hold me back, I could accept that some amount of it is just part of the process. And of course, you still want to limit it, but some of it will happen. And I can try to see it as an opportunity to deepen my understanding of the problem and make my solution that much better. So the next myth let's talk about is that on screen, people who like computers always seem to be alone. And again, here are some images you may recognize. They're a loner. They stay in their basement all day, never need to go out and see the light of the sun. They only have friends online. And that really worried me when I was thinking about becoming an engineer, because I'm a very social person. And I didn't want to have to work in a basement alone all day, even though I really liked engineering. So I want to make sure you know that in reality, engineering is super collaborative. Most engineers are part of a bigger team and a community, and I am constantly working with my teammates as we design systems together, or we help each other track down bugs, or we review each other's code. And a lot of people don't know that good communication skills and collaboration and leadership are just as important as an engineer as the code that you write. And also, I don't just get to work with other engineers. I actually work with people in product and legal and PR and communications, and the list just goes on and on. I'd also like to point out that I don't work in a basement. I'm currently working from home, which hopefully you can tell is not a basement, but even at work, it's lovely. And so let's talk about the final myth. And that is that apparently, according to film and television, you have to look a certain way to be a good engineer. And this is something that Natoki and Justin touched on as well, this sort of cultural representation. So just as Justin did, I want you to take a second to specifically visualize, though, what you think of when you think of someone who's into computers and someone who is a software engineer. And it's very possible, it probably doesn't involve a lab coat anymore, right? But it's very possible that, based on what you often see on film and TV, that this is what you imagined, right? Somebody who's usually wearing glasses, often a hoodie for some reason, and most often a guy. And as you've seen, I don't look like that, which when I was considering becoming an engineer made me think that there was no way I was going to fit in. So let me tell you that you, of course, don't have to look a certain way to do this job. And the engineering communities that I've been a part of have been much more diverse than what I was led to believe based on what I saw in film and television. Now, there is still a long way to go in that area, and we definitely need more diversity. So even Hollywood is catching on to the fact that we need to encourage all kinds of people to be interested in STEM, because it does not matter how you look, where you come from, how you dress, how old you are, how you learn to code, or so many other things. The fact is that anyone can be a great engineer. So remember, the next time that you're watching film or TV show and they have a software engineer who's up on the screen, I want you to try to put yourself in their shoes and just see if you like it. But no matter what, just remember that it could absolutely be you up there. And that's what I have. I'm delighted to hear what questions.
Awesome job, Kim. Thank you so much for that. I think that you touched on some really, really powerful points there. Thank you for the myth busting, shattering what it means to be an engineer, what it means to look like an engineer, what it means to look like a computer scientist. I think I'm very impressed that, you didn't let a lot of the stereotypes and preconceived notions get to your head, when you were thinking about, okay, I'm an actress, and it takes, so many people say, like, the type of person, we were talking about this before, the type of person that it takes to be an actress could not be the type of person it takes to be an engineer, and vice versa. Like I've heard people say that, or things like that. Most engineers just can't, they don't have people skills, or, most people that act, well, they're just not smart enough. And so I'm glad that, you let all those things go in pursuit of your dreams. And I think that that's extremely inspirational. So I want to move into some, yeah, no problem. I want to move into some Q&A here. We've got a couple of pre-submitted questions for you. So Cheryl F., a retired educator from Virginia, says, what motivated and inspired you to actually switch careers?
So it was interesting. I still love acting. I didn't love the industry side of it. And I was looking for something stable, which, nobody told me acting wasn't stable. But really what drove me, I think, is that I did a little bit of computer science. Loved math growing up, but I didn't think I want to do it professionally. And then in college, I took a couple computer science classes, and I loved the fact that it combined that kind of problem solving and puzzle solving with actually building something and getting to having something you could show for your work that other people could use. And I loved that feeling, but I frankly thought it was too late. Even as an undergrad in college, I thought, I've already started taking theater classes and it's too late. I'm too old already. Like, if you're going to be a software engineer, you're supposed to have been building compilers when you were 11. And so in a way, I did get in my own way. And it was only after about 8 years as an actor and realizing I think I'm ready for a change that it kind of occurred to me, like, what if I could do that? I mean, I'm even older now. I was 30, but I got a lot of encouragement from friends and family, and I knew some software engineers at the time who sort of said, like, no, you could absolutely do this. So it did take a lot of courage, and I was it was hard to push through a lot of those stereotypes. So that's one of the reasons I'm really passionate about talking about it, because I want to free the way up for people who are interested in it to not have to push their way through.
Wow, that's impressive. So you were 30 years old when you first started thinking, I'm going to transition into a software engineer position. And now you're at one of the most prestigious companies in the world doing software engineering. I think that that's an amazing testimony. And I'm really curious if you could go into a little bit more depth of, like, what that transition looked like from a skill acquisition perspective. You being at 30 years old, like, statistically speaking, your brain is less plastic, meaning, it's hard to reform and learn new stuff. And so a lot of people would just be discouraged by that alone. But how did you acquire that skill set so late in your career?
Yep. No, great question. So one of them was that I was incredibly determined, and I learned one of many great skills as an actor was not to take no for an answer. And so I got in my head I wanted to do this, and I knew I needed to go back to school. So I sent out some letters to local graduate schools, and actually ones across the country. And most of the responses I got back were, that sounds like a cool thing you want to do, but you don't have a STEM undergraduate degree, so we're not sure how to help. And I pushed at UCLA, and I sent a follow-up email and said, no, really, please just take a meeting with me. I understand this is non-traditional, and I just want to know what I need to do to be a competitive applicant, and I will go do it. And bless him, the vice chair, who was amazing, took a meeting with me and basically gave me a laundry list. He said, like, all right, go take your GREs, ace the math portion, take classes during the summer because you can register as a member of the public. And then I got permission from professors throughout the year to essentially audit their classes while I was applying for the master's degree. And it was all these people along the way who were willing to say yes, who were willing to say, oh, that's unconventional, but you're clearly very motivated and I can help you. So I would like to help you. So one thing for everyone out there is that if you do have an obstacle, know that so many people often want to help you overcome that obstacle. And all it takes is you just asking and asking for help and saying, I'm really passionate about this, and can you please help me? And so many people did. So while I was applying, I was auditing classes, and then I got into the master's program. So I did 2 years for that. And then Google hired me as a new grad right out the gate. And I feel incredibly blessed and grateful that that happened.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow, that's an amazing testimony, and it's just another philosophy of mine. Don't take no for an answer. Find a way around, underneath, above, to the left, to the right. There's always a way. For the folks in here, I know maybe many of us have pulled this trick. If you ever like ask your mom for something and she says no, then you go and ask your dad, and then he says yes. Right. So just apply that philosophy to the world. Like there's always one person telling you no doesn't mean that everyone's going to tell you no.
The moms
so I
on
think
here are
that's
probably not very happy you said that.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, it's a reality. So I know the kids, as long as the kids are happy, I'm happy. But yeah, so one of the other cool things, a cool question here. What do you feel, or do you feel rather, that the image of STEM in mainstream media has improved?
That's a great question. So I've actually been involved in some efforts at Google. They have a team called the CS and Media team. And their role is basically to lobby Hollywood and writers and producers to try to include more representation of diverse characters in STEM on film and TV. And I've been blessed to be able to go advise in writers' rooms, and I've even been on camera on some PBS Kids shows. And I think there is a huge wave. There's a big movement of people who have become aware of the diversity issue and how, as Notoki was saying, a lack of diversity means you're missing out on ideas and you're missing out on innovation and you're missing voices at the table of people who could contribute really incredible things. And so I think Hollywood is absolutely starting to move in that direction of let's make sure that we represent all of the possibilities, not just what people immediately think of and just put that back on screen and re-reflect it, but let's show people the reality of how diverse it is and how much it can be, and go there. So as I showed a couple images in my slide of the Powerpuff Girls, they had an episode where she saves the world through code, and even Silicon Valley included a woman software engineer. So I think there is a great trend in that direction, and we still have a ways to go, but it's heartening for me to see that.
Cool. So we're going to do one last question before we transition into our next phase. I'm really curious about this. I asked Notoki this. Do you have any role models that really influenced you?
It's a great question. And I was thinking about that as Notoki was answering. I will also say my parents, who I admire that they were so willing to support me in the arts. I know that that's a challenging thing for parents. And then my dad in particular was actually in the sciences and then career transitioned at 30 into becoming a lawyer. And he continues to be a great inspiration to me. He isn't intimidated by learning new things. And so I remember a couple years ago, when I was starting to get into coding, he in his 70s was like, hey, I want to learn Python, which is a coding language. And so he got a book and he started learning it, and we got to debug things together. And it's so inspiring to me to remember that it doesn't matter how old you are, you can always learn new things, you can always find things interesting, and there's no need to be intimidated. So
amazing. Awesome. And everybody, please, from your homes, give Kim a virtual round of applause and a huge thank you for sharing her story with us today. And Kim, you are not done with us yet. We are about to transition to our next phase where Dr. Notoki Ford joins us again. So Notoki, I think you're coming in a second here. Please get ready for that. There we go. Hey, how's it going?
Hello.
Welcome back.
Good, still here.
Cool. So we have a few questions to get everybody started. Really cool. And thank you guys again for your amazing example. So Kim, question for you. With computer science and tech evolving so rapidly, what do you think today's students can expect in the next 5-10 years in the CS industry, and what kind of jobs might they be looking at?
Oh man, I don't know that I have a view of the whole CS industry, but I do think that there are a lot of jobs in the pipeline, right? This is one of the things that through these diversity efforts are trying to be addressed, is that there's so many jobs and not enough technical talent to fill them. So I think, if you're interested at all and you want something that's probably going to get you a job at the end of it all, it's a great field to get into. And it's interesting, there's so many different specialties too. I think people just think computer science and it's just like, oh, work with computers, right? And I don't know that people understand how many different, not just, they're technical roles that you might not think of as technical, like Ntozake was saying, data scientist, right? Like you are writing code sometimes, but you're not actually writing code that runs on a server somewhere, but it's one possible job in tech. Like graphic designers work in tech. Like I was saying, legal, PR. So the technical field itself is like very vast and varied. I think there's a lot of movement on the machine learning and artificial intelligence front. I think that would be a really interesting field to like explore more and is sort of developing more in the future. Yeah, sort of from my perspective on the field, that is what I see.
Oh, Justin is muted. Can we hear? Can you hear?
Sorry about that, guys.
Wait, is it me?
So I was going to say, we are currently at 1 hour, and we're going to ask one more question to you, Ntozake, and we are going to wrap things up. So Ntozake, what is your favorite memory from your time working at the White House?
Oh, gosh, so many. It's hard to say. I would say some of my favorite memories. So the White House, during the Obama years, we would host the White House Science Fair. And I think and it was obviously a huge undertaking to bring all these kids from around the country together, but it was so exciting to see them be there sharing their projects. And President Obama loved to talk to the kids. He would always go overtime when he would be visiting certain stations with the kids. So I think probably among my favorite memories was just being able to bring people, especially kids in STEM, to the White House. And then in some cases, they got to meet the president and present their projects via the White House Science Fair. So I think that was among my favorite memories. And of course, that I mentioned already, the Hidden Figures screening, to be able to provide that as like a last note. And actually, one last thing I'll share, I know we're over time, but a really cool thing that you won't see in the live stream, if you go on YouTube, there's actually the video of the panel that I moderated with the Hidden Figures team. And after the panel, we were able to do a meet and greet backstage with what they thought was only going to be the First Lady. And we were able to provide a nice treat and have the president stop by as a surprise. So there's some really cool photos of some of the cast. Octavia Spencer, I think, had the best shock face in terms of clutching imaginary pearls. So I would say that's probably my other favorite moment, was being able to surprise the team, the Hidden Figures team, with a visit from the president, which is a really magical moment. So
that's amazing. Well, thank you both so much for sharing all of your wise words, all of your amazing perspectives with our audience today. I'm sure that you guys are going to have plenty of followers, young women, young men, and all the above, just interested in what you guys are doing, because you guys are really paving the way for the folks like me and even younger that are looking to go into career fields like you all. So huge thanks to you guys once again, and I will be seeing you guys hopefully virtually sometime again soon.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
All right, folks. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's first installment of XSTEM All Access. Please tune in tomorrow at the same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, for Ambassadors of Conservation and Climate. And tomorrow we'll be hearing from atmospheric scientist Dr. Catherine Hayhoe and primatologist and National Geographic explorer Dr. Maria Mayer. Plus, we're going to have a very, very special guest appearance from a climate change activist and former Vice President Al Gore. And a couple more things that are coming up later in the series: special appearances by Dr. Anthony Fauci, Dr. Francis Collins from the NIH on May 18th, NASA astronaut Christina Cook on May 19th, and many more rock star STEM role models you guys will not want to miss. Don't forget, you can submit your questions in advance for a better chance at getting a shout in the program, and check your email for the link, or go ahead and submit your questions on social media and show me some love. Follow me at Mr. Fascinate if you guys want more information. Before we say goodbye for today, we'd like to thank our sponsor, AstraZeneca, once again for supporting this program. I think we got a lot of good things from this program. AstraZeneca would like to invite students, parents, and teachers to take a virtual field trip and learn more about their Generation Health program. Go to howsciencepowersus.com or see the link below in the video player to learn more. So I'll see you guys tomorrow for a lot more STEM inspiration. And don't forget to show us how you STEM. So again, you guys tag us at USA Science Fest. You can tag me at Mr. Fascinate on Instagram and use the hashtag #ShowUsSTEM. And we'll be sharing some of our favorite posts on the last day of XSTEM All Access for the now 40,000 viewers to see. So be sure to tag us for an opportunity to appear there. Thanks, guys, and I will see you all in the next one.